Hello, 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 and welcome. I'm Sherry Hemstreet of thesherryhemstreet.com, and I am thrilled that you are joining me. If this is your first time hearing me and we don't know each other, hello, welcome. I'm so happy to have you. This is very exciting to share this time. If we know each other quite well and you've been with me a long time, welcome back. I'm thrilled to share this with you and deliver more and keep bringing the magic and next steps together for you. Today I want to talk about reflections. Reflections are an amazing thing and something that I feel we just really don't do enough of. Early on in my entrepreneurial journey, I had an amazing mentor and coach, although I didn't agree with him and I didn't stay with him very long, and I wouldn't say that I had great advancements with him. The things that I did take away were amazing. And it's always interesting to me when we hire a mentor and then we find out they aren't quite the mentor for us. Because a lot of people will view that as a problem. But never once have I not received something from a mentor, whether they were the right mentor or not the right mentor, whether they were aligned or misaligned. I've kind of always thought that it was up to me to get the value. It's so interesting. And so this mentor of mine, I learned some very interesting things from him. But one of the most important things that I learned from him, and probably the one that I circle back to most often, because I circle back to this every single year, I circle back to this every quarter, I circle back to this anytime I go through a hard space, right? Or a space of growth. Because that's exactly what we're meant to do. It's something that people don't talk enough about. But we're meant to reflect. We're meant to go into reflection. And if you're a high achiever, of course you are, like I know that, you're here, you're doing what most people won't, you're making more than most, you're doing hard things, things that most people would never dream of or considering doing, unwilling to settle for average, right? And the real thing that was so important to me, which is exactly where we're starting here, is reflection. Now, he didn't say it or call it reflection. That's obviously just the way I'm presenting it, and it's how I've always thought of it. But he did say to me, in fact, he actually didn't say this to me. He said this to somebody else, and then he went into it for the few of us that were there. And it was, if you never look back at how far you've come, you'll never get where you're going. And when he first said that, I was like, this guy's pretty fucking crazy, because gotta be honest, I don't do that, and I've come really fucking far. But here's the interesting thing about that. The more I sat on it and the more I chewed on it, because I was like, okay, there's greater depth here, right? Like, he said the thing, and the thing is always the breadcrumb, and it's up to us to become more insightful, to unpack the breadcrumb, to see what the actual container is holding, right? And so I looked at it and I was like, well, I have come very, very far. I've done incredible things, for being a high school dropout and for only going to college for what I felt I needed to learn to pursue what I wanted to, which was international business and some other things. I've done quite well. I've done very well. But I looked at it and I was like, but I've really forced a lot. Like, I've had to buckle down and grind and hustle and force and push. And, for a period, that is okay, but you can't sustain that. That's not life well lived. And we are here to live a well-lived life full of joy. And so I started unpacking this, and I was like, okay, assuming that he is right, assuming that there is something more to this, assuming that obviously I don't know every single thing in the world. I know it's shocking. I shock myself with that too. But, and wouldn't ever tell my husband, we're not telling him this, but assuming I don't know everything in the world, I really sat and reflected on what it was he said. Because here's what I did know. I knew that reaching my goals was sometimes spectacularly easy and other times excruciatingly hard and difficult and painful and death by 1,000 cuts. And so as I looked at this, I started applying it, because the first step is always reflection, and then you have to bring the pieces and parts of the puzzle together. And I thought, Sherry, if you did look at this, and if he was right, what would you look at? And I said, well, I would look at all of the things that I have accomplished. I would look at exactly where I came from and see how far I have come. And that right there unlocks so much for me. And it sounds so simple, but yet to this day, 12 years later in business, to this day, in this iteration of business, mind you, I've been my own brand for 30 years. I've had several different businesses. But in this iteration of my business, at the point where I had actually taken his words to heart and applied them, I had come so astoundingly far. I was doing what most people were dreaming of doing. I was waking up, slapping something on the internet, and getting paid. I was getting paid for my thoughts. I was getting paid to be who I am. I was getting paid to have people around me that I could impart and share not only my wisdom, my frequency, my mentorship, but I was living the dream that I had dreamed of. And I'd even been told in some capacity I would be doing since it was 2006 maybe, when I was told that this would be my path. And it wasn't even an entire revelation of this is your path. And I haven't even fulfilled the entire journey of that, because there was more given when I got that message. And but I looked at what I had done already, and it was just astounding. It was just amazing. I put it down on paper and I really got to see. And it took a while, right? It took a while because at first you're like, so what have I done? But when you look at what you have done, you have come so far. And this does something fantastical in the mind, absolutely extraordinary, because when you allow yourself to actually go through the process, not just hear it, not just conceptualize it, not just use this as a mindset bit, but when you allow yourself to go through the process and experience it, there becomes a piece of embodiment that locks in. And this is for my overly cerebral thinkers who like to contain everything in their head and overthink and get in those loops, right? Because those people, while they are highly intuitive, also operate from high logic. They take information in and they're like, nah, that won't work. That won't do it. That won't be it for me. That won't work for me. And there was a bit of me there, right? I was like when he said it, I was I was not impressed. But I knew there was something there because when he said it, the way I see energy, like things will light up or things will light up in the air. It's very weird. If somebody says something, their words will take on a different vibration and color, a different frequency. And that's how I know that there's something there for me. It's the same thing. Like when I look at someone's business, something will take on a different color and frequency. And I know that that's where I need to look when I do like psychic sessions or things like that, oracle sessions. But he said that, and I remember, and I was like, oh, there's something there. And the first thing I did was think about it, and I was like, and then I thought about it more, It wasn't until I sat down and got out of my mind and started working through the experience in the physical, not in the logical, not in the conceptual, not in the mind, not theoretically, ass in seat, pen in hand, notebook on lap. And what revealed itself? What was conceived from that or perceived from that was nothing less than extraordinary. You see, we overlook all of the things that we do. All of the skills that I had acquired, whether I had mastered them or not, I had acquired new skills. I had acquired new ways of thinking. I had acquired new perceptions. I had acquired new knowledge. I had acquired new habits, new behaviors, new emotions, new feelings. I had been through new experiences. I had learned so much. I had embodied so much. I had become so much more than I was. And at this time, I was just looking at it from when I had started my business, but this is something that I do yearly and quarterly because I am not satisfied with stagnancy. And I had to get to a point where I would not tolerate it. There was a point in my business where I thought that being stuck was normal. There was a point in my business where I thought being stuck was part of the process. There was a point where I thought the plateau, the ceiling, or the invisible wall was part of the process. And literally learning that it was a choice, and I kept choosing it, was like the biggest gobsmacking mind-breaking moment. It was literally, I was like, whoa. And my standard is that I don't get stuck. My standard is that I don't tolerate stagnancy. I don't tolerate a plateau. I don't tolerate status quo. And you may have heard me on other audios or recordings or teachings, trainings, whatever, saying that I don't. But there was a time when I just really thought it was normal. And because I don't tolerate it, I do this every year and I do it every quarter. And every quarter, I have to have marked and measurable change, transformation, because that's going to correlate exactly to my data, my metrics, and my money. If there was one thing that I could go back to brand new business online Sherry and tell her, it would be sure, go ahead, take the courses, learn some copywriting, learn the basics, and then put the basics down because you know the basics. Work with the basics, but that's not where you put your energy, your focus, and your time. Where you put your energy, your focus, your time is on your growth. Because I have to say, I've always built my business on math. Getting to 7 figures was really just simply math. Getting wherever I want is simply math. Success is math. Everything is math. Manifesting is math. Success is math. And funny for a girl that hated math and, never thought that she would be such a hardcore proponent of math. Math is in the core of everything I do. So with that being said, I would learn the basics, and then I would put all of that to the side, knowing how to make it work. Like, I would make sure I knew how to make it work. And then all I would do is work on myself. And there's kind of an order in which you need to work on yourself. And it's slightly different for everyone, but, for the most part, it's going to be mindset is first. Very important. And I would just work on myself, and I would go through the list of, the few pieces that you have to work on yourself to get where you want to be, because making 100,000 is no different than making 10,000. And it's no different than making 1,000,000. I mean, when I say truly, the way you make 10,000 is the same way you make 100,000 is the same way you make 1,000,000. I'm not even joking. I offered all the same products. I did all the same thing. But it was me. And I had been working on myself. I started working on myself when I was 17. And in that, I had a lot of head start because, everybody else was going to college and, doing things. I don't know what they were doing because I was off doing my own thing, which was, getting knocked up at 19, being pregnant, having a baby, and figuring out the way to make my life as hard as it could be by being 1,200 miles from anyone I knew. And so the success that looks so easy, the success that seems so natural, the success that is so inevitable is only inevitable because it is downstream of who I am, right? So who I am being. And it's not who I started out as. It's who I became. Now, if you would have known me and worked with me in the very, very, very beginning, I had a lot of great qualities and plenty of not so great qualities. And the things that I learned through business and working on myself, because business is the greatest point of growth if you use this as your point of growth, far outweigh many, many, many things. Like, I can't even tell you. It is growth beyond degrees. It is growth beyond college, university. Imagine, it is growth beyond the books that few people are willing to do. You see, everybody is kind of willing to learn a decent level of education so they can be considered civilized or they can function in society. But those that are willing to work on themselves, and it's just like maybe 15% at most. I'm talking, that's a very generous figure. Those people, and the ones who are truly committed to it at the level of like breathing, those people are even less. Which is funny because when I started my business, I used to say you had to be committed to making money. Like, you needed air to breathe. Money and air had to be the same essence. Now I am like, your commitment to your own growth has to literally be as non-negotiable as taking air into your lungs. They're the same thing. And so that's interesting because in reflection, I now look back at all of my journey, and then I look back at all of my year, and I look back at all of my quarter. And if I haven't grown in one entire year in such a remarkable and noticeable way, I know exactly where my year went wrong. I know exactly where everything didn't work for me. I can pinpoint everything. It is literally like a roadmap that tells a story that even the money and money data will not. And it's funny because everybody's like, well, let's look at the money data. Let's look at the money data. Let's look at the money, like okay, with the money metrics, the money data. Like that is downstream of who you are, of who you are being, of who you became. You want to get upstream and do the self-development and the becoming. And then downstream, you get the reward, and it's beautiful. So when you go through this, do this for yourself and start really looking at everything about you that is different in every way. And really allow yourself to see that you are different. And here's the thing that I talk about with my high level clients, right? Because a lot of times they come to me and they're like, I'm doing something and nothing is changing. And I'm like, oh, it's very simple. You aren't changing. And they haven't gotten into the habit of seeing their changes. So they cannot see their changes. And that's a very important part of it. And I don't know that mentor was trying to verbalize that. I think he was trying to deliver a much more simple message. And his message was simply like, look how far you've come, and it will make the distance to where you're going shorter. 100,000% true. Yes, I'm aware 100,000% doesn't exist, but it does in my world because I live in abundance. Thank you. And that's the mindset bit, right? Like that's the mindset bit. Like when you realize how far you've come and where you are going, it's just a tiny bit further on the spectrum. And that's beautiful. That will change everything for you if you understand how to work with that. But going deeper into the reflection and seeing the changes and the dynamic changes and the way you have been operating, it gives you a revelation. It gives you the drop of the illusion, the nothing is hidden revelation of like the truth. And that's reflection. Reflection on who you've been. And there's nothing more important than that because, well, there is. It's who you're becoming, right? But who you are becoming is the next step. And one builds on the other. You don't work from who you've been, but you have to reflect on who you've been. And that will lead to who you're becoming. And that's just beautiful to me. That's everything to me because who you are becoming is the greatest you've ever been. It's who you are here to be. And so that's the message. So at this time, I would urge you to go ahead and whether you're doing this for the new year, the past year, the quarter, whatever it is, to really look and dive deep within yourself. Get this down on paper and really get a visual of who you were at whatever point you started this journey, whether it's the journey when you started your business, the journey at the beginning of this year, the journey at the beginning of the quarter, and how different you are now. And it's a beautiful experience and illustration. And, I don't love every data and metric. I don't like to dive into all of the numbers and sift through that. I find this to be much more cohesive and much more effective. I find this to be much better than trying to optimize for data is optimizing